Have you ever jumped into a completely new trading card game and felt like you were trying to read ancient hieroglyphs blindfolded? Well, that's exactly how I felt when I decided to dive headfirst into Riftbound for an entire week. And let me tell you, coming from a Pokemon card collecting background into the League of Legends based universe was like switching from riding a bicycle to piloting a spaceship. So in this video, I'm sharing everything that I discovered during my 7-day Riftbound journey. The good, the bad, the moments where I questioned my life choices, from struggling with a Jinx starter deck that seemed designed to make me lose, to discovering why some champions are apparently gods, while others are, well, let's say they're not. And if you're thinking about trying Riftbound for yourself, or you're curious what it's like for a Pokemon card collector to venture into completely uncharted territory, stick around because this does get interesting. Now let me start with the elephant in the room, which is Riftbound is complicated, and I mean really complicated. Coming from Pokemon where you have energy cards, Pokemon and trainer cards, Riftbound feels like someone took a trading card game and decided to add 17 different mechanics just for fun. Within my first hour of playing, I realized I had absolutely no idea what 90% of my cards actually did. There are keywords everywhere, abilities that trigger off other abilities, and synergies that might require a PhD in game theory just to understand. It's like the difference between playing checkers and playing 4D chess while someone's shouting League of Legends terminology at you. And here's the thing, and this might surprise you, that complexity is actually part of what makes it engaging. Once you start to grasp even the basics, you begin to see these intricate puzzle pieces fitting together. It's intimidating at first, but there's something satisfying about finally understanding why a particular card combo works. My goal for the week was simple: learn at least 90% of what my cards do, but spoiler alert, I didn't quite hit that target. But I got close enough to feel like a functional human being instead of someone randomly placing cardboard rectangles on a table. Now, speaking of feeling like a functional human being, let's talk about my deck of choice for this experiment. It was the Jinx starter deck that I picked up from Best Buy. I figured, hey, if I'm going to learn a new game, might as well start with what's already readily available, right? And this was wrong of me, very wrong. Jinx, as I quickly discovered, is apparently the hard mode of Riftbound champions. Her entire strategy revolves around discarding cards, which sounds counterintuitive when you're coming from Pokemon, where drawing cards is generally considered a good thing. It's like someone designed a champion specifically to confuse Pokemon players. The deck wants you to discard cards to power up Jinx's abilities, but here's the problem. When you're new and you don't know what you're doing, discarding cards feels like throwing away your chances of winning every game. Every time I had to discard something, I'd stare at my hand for like 2 or 3 minutes, trying to figure out which card I could afford to lose. Spoiler alert, usually it was the wrong choice. But Jinx does have some redeeming qualities. Watching her zip around the board and conquer battlefields was generally satisfying, and when you finally land that Super Mega Death Rocket, yes, that's actually what the card is called, it feels pretty incredible. Plus, the deck comes with some sneaky cards like Ride the Wind and Gust that can completely change the game if you know how to use them wisely. The key word there being if you know how to use them. Now here's something that perfectly encapsulates my luck with timing. I started playing Riftbound literally right when they released their first wave of banned cards. And guess what? Most of my banned cards were sitting right in my Jinx starter deck. It's like buying a car and then immediately being told that half the parts are now illegal to use. I never even got to experience these apparently overpowered cards in their full glory. Instead, I got to learn the game with the nerfed, balanced versions while everyone online talked about the good old days of broken combos that I'll never ever get to try again. Now there's something both hilarious and frustrating about this. On one hand, I'm probably learning the game in a more balanced state, which is good for my development as a player. On the other hand, I feel like I missed out on some legendary moments of chaos that veteran players got to experience. Now let's address something that became very clear very quickly. Not all champions are created equal. While I was struggling with Jinx and her discard heavy strategy, I kept hearing about champions like Draven and Irelia who apparently have much higher win rates. This was eye-opening coming from Pokemon, where some decks are stronger than others. The power gaps aren't usually quite this dramatic though. In Riftbound, champion choice seems to matter a lot more than I initially expected. Draven, from what I observed and heard from other players, has tools that just seem more straightforward and more powerful than what Jinx brings to the table. Irelia, on the other hand, is another one that kept coming up in conversations about strong champions, and watching other players pilot these champions made me realize that my struggles weren't entirely due to being new. Some of it definitely was champion choice. But here's what I learned. Starting with a more challenging champion might actually be beneficial in the long run. If you can figure out how to make Jinx work, transitioning to other champions later might feel easier by comparison. It's like learning to drive with a manual transmission. Everything else feels simple afterwards. Now, one of my most interesting parts of this week of playing was trying to figure out what kind of player I am in Riftbound. I had certain preferences and habits, but this was completely new territory for me. I found myself drawn to the more tactical aspects of the game. Moving Jinx around the board, positioning her for maximum impact, and timing her discards became generally more engaging. There's something chess-like about the positioning elements that Pokemon doesn't really have. The resource management aspect was fascinating too. Unlike Pokemon where you're mostly managing energy cards, Riftbound has this whole ecosystem of mana, power, and card advantage that you need to balance. It's like juggling while riding a unicycle, difficult but oddly satisfying when you don't fall flat on your face. I also discovered that I enjoy the more interactive nature of Riftbound compared to Pokemon. I feel like I'm more focused on my strategy with some disruptive elements when I'm playing Riftbound. In Riftbound, you're constantly reacting to what your opponent is doing, adapting to your strategy on the fly. Now here's something that exceeded my expectations. The Riftbound community, particularly at my local game stores during Nexus nights, they have been fantastic. I attended a few of these events during my week-long experiment, and honestly, they were the highlights of the entire experience. Out of the roughly 16 games that I played across these events, every single opponent was incredibly welcoming and helpful. Coming from someone who's experienced various gaming communities, this level of consistent friendliness was remarkable, and people were genuinely excited to help a new player learn, offering tips, and also explaining interactions and being patient when I took forever to make decisions. Now there's something special about a community that's still growing and establishing itself. I feel like everyone's invested in making sure new players have a good experience, probably because they remember being new as well and also that they want more players to play. It's refreshing compared to some more established gaming communities where veteran players can sometimes be less patient with beginners. The learning environment at these events was incredible, and instead of just losing and feeling frustrated, I was losing a lot and learning something new each game. Players would explain their cards, they would explain their plays, point out better lines that I could have taken, and generally treated each game as a teaching opportunity. Coming from Pokemon, I had a very specific mindset about bulk cards. Those common and uncommon cards that you usually don't think twice about. In Pokemon, bulk is often just bulk, right? I mean, sure, some trainer cards have value and are playable, but most commons and uncommons are exactly that. Common and not particularly valuable. Riftbound completely flipped this perspective for me. Because it's also become a competitive game for me where I'm actually trying to build decks to play, suddenly every card has potential value, and it's not that numeric value or money value that I'm talking about. That random common spell that seemed useless, it might be exactly what someone needs for their deck. Those uncommon followers that I initially dismissed, they could be key pieces and strategies that I haven't even discovered yet. This shift in thinking was probably one of the most valuable lessons that I learned from this week. Instead of just looking for the flashy rare cards, I started evaluating everything through the lens of, could this be useful in one of my decks? It's a completely different way of approaching a collection, and honestly, it makes the hobby way more fun. Now let's take a moment to talk about something that immediately caught my attention. The artwork in Riftbound is absolutely stunning. Coming from Pokemon, which has fantastic art, I wasn't expecting to be blown away, but these overnumbered cards are genuinely impressive. I feel like they're more mature and more appropriate for my age in a way as well. The alternate art treatments and special versions have this premium feel that makes them genuinely exciting to pull. There's something about the League of Legends aesthetic that translated into a card format that just works well. The champions look epic, the spells have this magical energy to them, and even the basic cards have some character and personality. This appreciation for the artwork added another layer to the collecting aspect. Even when I was struggling with gameplay, opening packs and seeing these beautiful cards made the experience a lot more enjoyable. It's that perfect combination of gaming and collecting that makes trading card games so much more compelling. Now, by the end of the week, I was starting to get a glimpse of the real strategic depth that Riftbound offers. The game has layers upon layers of decision making that I was only beginning to understand. Every turn presents multiple viable options, and the consequences of your choices ripple through the entire game. One thing that became clear to me is that knowing how to use your legend is equally important to the success of any match as any other strategic element. Your legend isn't just some passive ability sitting there, it's an active tool that can completely swing games when used correctly. I learned this the hard way after several matches where I either forgot to use my legend entirely or used it at completely wrong moments. The timing of when you activate your legend creates these crucial decision points that can define your entire game. Do you use it early to gain board control, or save it for a defensive moment when you're behind, or hold it for that perfect game-winning opportunity? I've watched players make brilliant legend plays that completely turned around seemingly hopeless situations, while my own legend usage was, let's say, suboptimal. The spell system is another area where the depth really shows. Managing your mana efficiently, knowing when to use fast spells versus slow spells, and understanding the stack, it's like learning a new language. But once you start to get it, you can see how much room there is for improvement and mastery. One thing that became clear during my week was that building a Riftbound collection requires a different approach than Pokemon. While Pokemon collecting can be very focused on specific sets or favorite Pokemon, Riftbound collecting seems more tied to gameplay needs. I found myself thinking about cards not just in terms of do I like this, but what decks can this go in? And what champions does this support? It's a more functional approach to collecting, but it's also more immediately rewarding because every card you acquire potentially improves your gameplay options. The over-numbered cards and alternate arts provide that premium collecting experience, while the regular cards serve the gameplay function. It's a nice balance that satisfies both the collector and the player sides of the hobby. Now let me be honest about something. The learning curve in Riftbound is steep, and I mean really steep. I thought I'd pick it up relatively quickly since I understand some other trading card fundamentals, but I was really wrong. The sheer number of keywords, interactions, and strategic concepts you need to internalize is overwhelming at first. There were moments during the week where I felt like I was making progress, only to encounter some new interaction that made me really think like, how does this work? But here's the encouraging part though. The learning curve is steep, but it's also very rewarding. Every small breakthrough feels significant. Understanding a new keyword, successfully executing a combo, or making a strategic play that actually works, these moments of progress are genuinely satisfying. Throughout the week, I couldn't help but compare Riftbound to Pokemon. Now honestly, that comparison helped me appreciate both games more. Pokemon's elegance and accessibility became more apparent when contrasted with Riftbound's complexity. At the same time, Riftbound's strategic depth highlighted areas where Pokemon might feel more limited. They're different games serving different purposes, and that's perfectly fine. Pokemon excels at being approachable while still offering depth for those who want it. Riftbound seems designed for players who want that complexity up front, who enjoy having dozens of decisions to make each turn. Neither approach is better or worse, they're just different. And experiencing both has made me a better player and a collector in both games. So after about a week of Riftbound immersion, attending Nexus nights, what's my verdict? Well, Riot definitely succeeded in creating something special. Despite the steep learning curve, despite my struggles with Jinx, despite feeling overwhelmed half the time, I'm hooked. There's something addictive about the complexity once you start to understand it. The community aspect exceeded all my expectations. The artwork and collecting elements satisfy that Pokemon collector itch while offering something new and different. Am I ready to abandon Pokemon for Riftbound? Absolutely not. But am I excited to continue learning and improving at Riftbound while maintaining my Pokemon collection? Absolutely yes. The beauty of a trading card game enthusiast is that there's room for multiple games in your life. Each one offers something different, and experiencing that variety makes you appreciate the unique strengths of each game. If you're thinking about trying Riftbound, especially if you're coming from another TCG or perhaps it's your first TCG like me, my advice is simple. Embrace the confusion. Accept that you're going to feel lost for a while, find your local Nexus Night events, and lean on the community for help. And most importantly, be patient with yourself. The learning curve is real, but the destination is worth the journey. Plus, if a Pokemon collector can figure out how to make a Jinx work, sort of, then anyone can learn this game. So well done, Riot. You've created something that I'm definitely hooked on, and I'll definitely be making more videos on Riftbound, but still making videos on Pokemon as well. I'm excited to see where this Riftbound journey takes me next, and I hope some of you decide to join me along for the ride. I'll see you guys all in the next video.